Hello, welcome to Sabbath School with Branch Davidians. I'm Ed, and I'm excited you're joining us today. We present or expound on a principle or belief related to the SDA Sabbath School Quarterly each week. This quarter, the first quarter of 2024, is on the Psalms. In last week's study, we looked at what Scripture has to say about whether prayer should be spoken out loud or merely thought in our minds. We focused on the Psalms in particular, both because the Psalms are the theme for this Sabbath School Quarterly, and also because they are very relevant for investigating the scriptural idea of prayer. What we found is that Scripture contains many examples and admonitions to pray audibly with our mouths, while it contains no admonitions or examples to pray merely mentally. Even though the idea of merely mental prayer is popular today, it is ultimately foreign to Scripture. You can find the link to last week's study in the description. It's called, Is Merely Mental Prayer Scriptural? We hope you'll check it out. Now, in this week's study, we're going to continue with this topic by looking at another aspect of prayer, specifically how Scripture portrays the role of angels in taking our prayers to God. And by the end, we'll explain how this relates to the fact that prayer in Scripture is never merely mental, but is always an outward expression of language. Now, let's take a moment to realize the importance of this subject. To do this, let's read something Ellen White said in the midst of the Kellogg crisis, which was largely about spiritualistic ideas John Harvey Kellogg was advocating regarding the nature of God. She said, "Extreme views of God and nature undermine the foundation truths of the personality of God and the ministration of angels." That's from letter 271B, 1903. We can learn a few things from this. First, the ministration of the angels is one of the foundation truths of Seventh-day Adventism, which means it must be important. Second, it is paired with the personality of God as truths that are undermined by extreme views of God and nature. And third, since it's an SDA foundation truth, it must have been understood by early SDAs at large. To get an idea of how early SDAs understood the ministration of the angels, let's read from one of the most important early SDA works on the subject called Angels, Their Nature and Ministry, written by Dudley Canwright and later revised by Joseph Wagner. God hath his throne in the heavens. The angels are represented as waiting before him, ready to go at his pleasure as messengers to all parts of his dominions. We have here a scene presented similar to that which we would behold in the court of an earthly monarch. The king sits upon his throne with his officers and servants around him. Messengers are constantly being received by him from the different parts of his dominions. When he determines what is needful to be done, he dispatches a trusty messenger to perform it in his name. He also has officers in different parts of his kingdom who faithfully report to him the state of things in their several districts. Thus, the king is able to attend to the wants of his subjects and to oversee their actions in all parts of the dominion, however large it may be. And thus it is that the Lord employs his servants, the angels. He always works by means or agents. The angels are his officers or messengers whom he has appointed to have charge of this earth. They watch over his people and minister to their wants. They bear the prayers of the saints up before the Lord and come again to answer them according to his directions. Again, that's from Angels, Their Nature and Ministry, page 27. Okay, for those of you who are familiar with Ellen White's writings, it'll be obvious that this is a nice summary of how she presents the ministration of angels as well. We definitely recommend reading the whole book, and we'll have a link to it in the description. One of the things pointed out in the book is that Scripture presents angels as involved in recording the works and words of humans. For example, Malachi 3:16 says, "Then those who feared Yahweh spoke one with another, and Yahweh listened and heard, and a book of memory was written before him for those who feared Yahweh and who honored his name." Again, that's from Malachi 3:16. The key point here is that a book of memory was written to record the words of certain people on earth. It's clear that it wasn't God himself who wrote the book, since it said it was written before him. And this same fact also implies that it was written in heaven and thus by heavenly beings. So clearly there are some heavenly beings employed by God to keep heavenly records of earthly affairs. And it stands to reason that if human words directed to other humans are recorded by these angels, human words directed to God would likewise be recorded. Here's another passage speaking of similar records in Psalm 56:8. It reads, "You count my wanderings. You put my tears into your container. Aren't they in your book?" That's Psalm 56:8. Again, we see a book of record. This verse says our tears are recorded. And if our tears are recorded, wouldn't our prayers most certainly be recorded too? Ellen White actually alluded to this psalm in a statement where she connected it to angels recording our prayers. She said, quote, "Let the recording angels write the history of the holy struggles and conflicts of the people of God. Let them record their prayers and tears." Close quote, Ellen White, Acts of the Apostles, page 561, paragraph 3. So here Ellen said, let angels record prayers. Elsewhere, she simply said that they do. For example, she said, angels record every prayer that is earnest and sincere. That was in Spirit of Prophecy, volume 4, page 439, paragraph 2. Now, you may have noticed that what we quoted from Malachi and Psalm 56 don't specifically mention prayers being recorded by angels or brought by angels to God. One could certainly infer prayers would be among the things recorded, but it simply isn't stated overtly like it is in what we just read from Ellen White. There are, however, other ancient scriptures that do state this more overtly. The first we'll quote comes from a book you might not have read before, since it isn't in most Protestant Bibles these days. It's from the book of Tobit, which is usually considered a part of the Apocrypha by Protestants, while Catholics, Orthodox Christians, and the churches further east include it in their biblical canons. Even though Adventists don't usually study the Apocrypha much these days, early Adventists actually studied it quite a bit and even considered certain books of the Apocrypha to be scripture. And Ellen White actually had some really interesting things to say about the Apocrypha. For example, she said, "I saw that the Apocrypha was the hidden book, and that the wise of these last days should understand it." That's Letters and Manuscripts, Volume 1, Manuscript 4, 1850, paragraph 13. There's a lot more to say about the Apocrypha in relation to Ellen White and early Adventism, but for that we recommend watching a video called Why SDAs Should Care About the Apocrypha. There will be a link to that in the description. The main point to keep in mind for now, though, is this. Early SDAs had a high regard for the Apocrypha, and Ellen White was even shown that it is important and that we need to understand it. So let's quote the passage from Tobit that relates most specifically to this subject of angels bringing our prayers to God. This is from Tobit 12:12, and the context is that an angel named Raphael is talking to a man named Tobit. Quote, "And now, when you prayed, and Sarah your daughter-in-law, I brought the memorial of your prayer before the Holy One." Close quote, Tobit 12:12. As you can see, this is a plain statement by an angel that he brought a record of Tobit's prayer to God in heaven. This is perfectly in harmony with what we've read from Ellen White. And this depiction of angels presenting our prayers before the throne of God is seen in Revelation too. Revelation 8, 3-4 reads, "Another angel came and stood over the altar, having a golden censer. Much incense was given to him, that he should add it to the prayers of all the saints on the golden altar which was before the throne. The smoke of the incense, with the prayers of the saints, went up before God out of the angel's hand." Again, that's Revelation 8, 3-4. In these verses, the prayers of the saints are symbolized by incense. An angel is pictured as offering our prayers before God like an offering. And this is the same imagery being used in Psalm 141:2, which reads, Let my prayer be set before you like incense, the lifting up of my hands like the evening sacrifice. That's Psalm 141:2. Here the psalmist is likening prayer to an offering of incense rising up to God. And prayer as incense is similarly depicted in Revelation 5:8, which reads, Now when he had taken the book, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, each one having a harp, and golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. Again, that's Revelation 5:8. Here we see incense again being representative of the prayers of the saints. And while those presenting the prayers before Jesus here are not called angels, it's clear that they are beings who have the job of presenting our prayers in the heavenly temple. As we wrap up this study, let's read one more statement from Ellen White on this point. Quote, Angels hear the offering of praise and the prayer of faith, and they bear the petitions to him who ministers in the sanctuary for his people, and pleads his merits in their behalf. Close quote, Ellen White, Review and Herald, February 1st, 1912, paragraph 6. So, just like we saw in Revelation and in Tobit, angels bring our prayers to heaven. On one hand, this may seem like common knowledge among SDAs. Many know that Ellen White taught that angels bring our prayers to God. Yet many haven't realized the implications of this. And this is where our subject relates to what we covered last week. So let's take a moment to put things in perspective. What we've seen over the last 2 studies is that scriptural prayer is not sentences and ideas merely thought in our minds. Instead, it is always expressed outwardly with our normal organs of linguistic communications. Angels then take a record of our prayers to heaven to be presented before God, who then hears reports of the petitions of his people as they are presented by angels, or by Jesus himself. This is the scriptural explanation of how our prayers reach God. Last week we saw that there is no scriptural admonition or example for the practice of merely mental prayer. Likewise, there is no scriptural depiction of our prayers getting to God by him receiving telepathic communications from people with no intermediaries. When people pray in their thoughts, it's normal to imagine that God is hearing these thoughts directly himself in real time, again, as though it were telepathic communication with God. But again, it's worth repeating, this is entirely foreign to Scripture, both in terms of humans praying in this way and in terms of God receiving prayers in this way. And moreover, it isn't just that this is unscriptural in the sense that Scripture doesn't have anything to say on this point. No, Scripture not only lacks affirmation of mental prayer and God receiving these telepathic communications in real time, it actually teaches an idea of prayer and how our prayers get to God that is inconsistent with the idea of mental prayer. If God were constantly hearing everyone's prayers in real time, then he would already have the prayers before any angel had an opportunity to bring them to him, rendering the angel's job of taking prayers to heaven useless. So the fact that angels do bring our prayers to God means that God isn't receiving them through mind reading. Lastly, let's remember again that we read a quote from Ellen White early in this study in which she said that extreme views of God and nature undermine the foundation truths of the personality of God and the ministration of angels. In other studies, we've explained the early SDA doctrine of the personality of God, and we'll link to a playlist on that topic in the description. The basic idea, though, as they themselves explained it, is that for God to be a person means that he is a material being with a body and parts. He isn't an essence pervading nature or anything like that. So how does this relate to prayer and the ministration of the angels? Well, if God were an essence pervading nature, he himself would already personally be everywhere that he might send angels. So why use angels if he's already personally there? And practically speaking, this is how many people view things. They imagine that God himself is literally everywhere present, even in their hearts and in their minds. And this is why it seems natural that he is reading our every thought. But I hope you can see why Ellen White said that such a notion undermines the personality of God and the angels. In Scripture, God is a person, a real material being who exists in a definite location, in the sanctuary in heaven. He isn't an all-pervading bodiless spirit. This is why the ministration of angels is so important. They are his agents that he has employed to carry out his plans throughout his kingdom and report back to him the happenings in various locations and the requests of his people. So we have two very different, mutually exclusive ideas. One is that God is literally everywhere at once, having no need of angels, and receives mental prayers via telepathy. This idea is spiritualistic and destroys the foundation truths that made us a people as Seventh-day Adventists. The other idea is that God is a real person, a material being in whose image we were made. He manages his kingdom by means of representatives, the angels, the work of whom includes bringing records of the requests of his people before his throne for his consideration. These requests, of course, are actual expressions of language rather than only being thoughts. This idea is materialistic, it is scriptural, and it sustains the foundation principles of our faith as Seventh-day Adventists. We realize these ideas may be new and different from what you're used to, but again, we hope you'll study into it further, and please do check out the series that we have linked in the description on the personality of God. Thank you for staying with us till the end. We invite you to visit our website, www.bdsda.com, to learn more about who we are and, just as important, who we are not. Please join us each week as we will continue to offer new and interesting insights for your Sabbath School studies. And if you want to keep up with our new studies as they are published, we recommend subscribing. We're on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on plenty of other podcast apps. Links for subscribing are in the description. God bless, and from Mary, many blessings.